Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Dennis, do you know that song?
Yes. Mason Betha.
Okay.
We were of those. We were of that era, the 90s.
Before we get into parliamentary matters and two-thirds agenda rule, you mentioned Article 55B of the Elections Act, Steve. And we had this conversation yesterday with Professor Bensi Hanya. He also pointed us in this direction as far as the postponement and the basis of the postponement of the election in those two counties, a gubernatorial race, various MP seats and ward rep seats. And a reading of 55B says that the commission may, where a date has been appointed for holding an election, postpone the election in a constituency, county or ward for such period as it may consider necessary where A, there is reason to believe that a serious breach of peace is likely to occur, B, it is impossible to conduct the elections as a result of a natural disaster, and C, that there has been an occurrence of an electoral malpractice of such a nature and gravity as to make it impossible for an election to proceed. Now, where an election is postponed under subsection 1, the election shall be held at the earliest practicable time. Notwithstanding, this is now I think what you referenced, the provisions of this section, the commission may, if satisfied that the result of the elections will not be affected by voting in the area in respect of which substituted dates have been appointed, direct that a return of the elections be made. Was IEBC required to meet this threshold? That is, either there's a serious breach of the peace, a natural disaster, or there has been electoral malpractice?
I think, Olive, the interpretive pathway to Section 55B would depend on your legal philosophy, for instance. If you are a textualist, you will adopt what lawyers call a mechanistic and legalistic interpretation, which means you limit yourself to what has been circumscribed as circumstances under which an election may be postponed within the scope of Section 55B. If you are a teleologist, you'll adopt what lawyers call a purposive and holistic interpretive approach, which means you go deep and ask yourself, are there circumstances that may not be listed under Section 55B, but which may be considered to fall within that rubric? The short answer is yes. The Constitution itself ordains an approach that requires the purposive interpretive matrix to the Constitution, and of course all the laws that fall under it. If you look at Section 55B, it permits IEBC to postpone elections if circumstances so demand. The section has attempted, although not drafted in elegant terms, it has attempted to list some of those circumstances. Can you say that situations such as what we find ourselves in Kakamega and Vihiga fall within the rubric of Section 55B? The short answer is yes. We cannot conduct election when the images of candidates and their names don't match. Olive, what provision of law would then permit IEBC to postpone those elections? The provision of the law that permits postponement is Section 55. I think in terms of what lawyers would call under the principle of necessity, even if you are to read Section 55 narrowly, which I have rejected, under the principle of necessity, Section 55B would still be called upon to permit the postponement of that election. And the right thing to do is for IEBC to advise the country when they think, because that provision permits them the discretion, when they think the ballot papers that were mixed up would be reprinted and then the election to go on. Initially, they had suggested that the election would be conducted on 25th or 28th. 25th, I think, of this month. But then they extended that timeline because of the commotion that happened at the commission and the disruption of the tallying process, which left key election officials traumatized. So they would have to issue new communication. But I think the Constitution also requires IEBC and all constitutional office holders to exercise their discretion judiciously, which means IEBC does not have the liberty to say we will conduct this election in Kakamega and Vihiga, Kakamega and Mombasa when we want. It must give practical timelines. What is the reasonable time? If it's not this month of August, it can't go beyond September. So I think the election will be conducted within the next 60 days.
I mean, Wakili, on that point that Olive is raising, the postponement of the election by the Commission,
Yes.
you have said that they also need to give practical timelines.
Yes.
But still, they are under their own discretion to say we will do it within 1 month or within 2 months. Do you think this opens a door, because this is a political process, does it then open a door for other issues that will arise later? Because if we don't have timelines within the Constitution, we have timelines for everything else. But how is it then this one is missing? So in the event, anticipating an event such as the one we find ourselves in, where we have Kakamega and Mombasa postponing, should there have been a provision then for a timeline and of which IBC should then conduct those elections instead of, you know, giving different dates and just leaving it open?
And if I can piggyback on what Dennis is asking. You see likely in 60 days. One, what informs that estimation? And two, is there precedence for what we are witnessing now, where the Commission is divided?
Well, I can tell you that the longest time IBC can take to conduct the election in Kakamega and Mombasa would not be more than 90 days. Why? They should conduct those elections within 90 days because ordinarily that is the time frame for conducting by-elections. If you look at them, if you're looking for tools to assist in interpreting, you know, if you're looking for a rational explanation, how long IBC can take before they conduct the election? Can they take 1 year? No. Can they take, unless circumstances so demand are so grave, yeah? I don't think circumstances that we have now, if you're talking about election officials being depressed, I think they should be able to come out of it quickly and be able to conduct the election. The Constitution, if you look at the timelines that the Constitution has provided, under Article 140 of the Constitution, a fresh election is to be conducted within 60 days. Fresh presidential election in the entire country within 60 days. If there was a runoff, it's supposed to be conducted within 30 days. So you have 30 days for a runoff, 60 days for fresh election, 90 days for by-election. So IBC would have to work extra hard to extend that time frame beyond 90 days. So that's why I said they have the discretion to determine when to conduct the election, but that discretion must also be exercised judiciously. Now, this is not like the 2017 fresh election where some 27 constituencies were election was postponed and they were never conducted. Ideally, IBC ought to have conducted the election in those 27 constituencies so that you don't disenfranchise. But if you look at the proviso under Section 55B and then Regulation 87.3 of the Election General Regulations 2012, IBC was permitted to call that election if the result in the 27 constituencies would not make a difference. Maybe they debated in their office and they decided, we have already called this election. Yes, some people have been disenfranchised, but what is the legal and practical sense benefits for conducting election? Is it just to tick a box that these 27 constituencies also voted when that result will not alter the outcome of that election? The outcome has already been determined, the fate is sealed, a president is serving. That context is different. The context we find ourselves in is that you have constituencies and counties that don't know the fate of their leaders. So therefore, election must be conducted. I believe that election will be conducted at the farthest 90 days. That is a rational explanation. I would be extremely shocked and worried if the Commission said they would conduct this election in the postponed areas probably in a period that is beyond 90 days. There would need to be a compelling reason. So if somebody has moved to court to seek to compel the Commission, like I said earlier, whatever IBC is going to say in response to those cases in court, it can actually communicate through a press conference. So what I would urge the Commission to do, in order to manage public expectation and lower anxiety, it needs to communicate the new dates so that candidates begin to prepare, so that there's closure in this election.